What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the After Credits Show. We are breaking down episode 4 of Hawkeye. Not a whole lot happened in this episode, setting up for episode 5 and 6, but there's definitely a lot to talk about, including the appearance of Yelena Belova. So stick around, because we got it all for you right here. I said in our prediction videos that I thought this was going to be a slower episode, and as far as I was concerned, I feel like I was right. I hit the nail on the head there. Not a ton happened. We got a lot of backstory. We got a lot of connection between Kate and Clint. Eleanor and Jack showed up in the episode, and there was a little bit of an ominous overtone there with that as well. And then the fight scene right at the end that culminated with the unmasking of Yelena and maybe how she fits into this. All of this setting up for some big showdowns in episode 5 and 6. I actually thought, even though it was a slow episode, it was one of my more favorite episodes and probably one of the better written ones, just because of the backstory and the use directing wise of some of the cutback scenes between Clint and Natasha and Endgame and the Ronin story, and then the fight on the rooftop, and Clint kind of having these PTSD flashbacks of Natasha falling off the roof and how he chooses to deal with that. All of those things were really well done, and the whole episode felt meaty. Every line and every interaction, stuff from the previous episodes and stuff moving forward and things from old movies, everything felt like it had a payoff. So it didn't feel like there was anything wasted in this episode, which is why I think it's one of my favorite episodes thus far. Other than that, a lot of potential for Easter eggs, and we'll talk about Easter eggs in another video coming up. But just shots of Eleanor's apartment, conversations that Eleanor and Jack have with Kate, especially about his aphorisms and why he doesn't really say things correctly and kind of mixes his metaphors and things like that. That was an interesting little tidbit there. And I haven't done any deep dives on it. I don't know if that's maybe a kind of a French throwback thing because of the swordsman deal, or if it's a detached thing because he's working with the Tracksuit Mafia guys, or maybe it's just kind of a jab at him trying to be this quippy stepdad father figure type, and he's just falling on its face. Haven't done a dive into that, but I thought it was an interesting little addition, and it's really very off-putting for that character. Like I said in my prediction video, the setup from episode 3 where Jack confronts Hawkeye with the Ronin sword ended very abruptly when Kate makes her presence known, and then Jack gets to say, "Oh, well, it's so nice to meet you," and "Oh, this is so great," and then showing off in front of Kate and dancing with Eleanor. The interaction with Eleanor and Clint as they walk out the door, where it seems very cordial, but then Eleanor drops this line about, "Why don't you just drop the case?" was very telling. Well, why does she care? What does she know? She's definitely connected with this, but moving forward, we've got several pieces that have yet to come together, and quite literally, Kate and Clint in her aunt's apartment are putting the pieces together. She's got those circles up on the wall. First, we got to do this, and then we got to do this, and we got to do these things. And so you have all these elements coming together. You got these LARPers that are definitely going to be the ones making Hawkeye's new suit. You've got Eleanor and Jack and how they connect together. Jack being outed as the CEO of Sloan Limited, which changes his swordsman's backstory from the comic origins. But like I said in one of our review videos, it's definitely weaving this story together in a really interesting way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But this Sloan Limited organization is actually another front, and they actually say it, laundering money for the big guy. It's a company that is actually owned by Kingpin, and we're going to see that later on in the comics. It's a company called Alchemax that ends up buying it out, and there's a lot of crossover there with some other characters. But you've got Eleanor and Sloan, you've got the LARPers, you've got Yelena making her presence known, and Hawkeye says, well, this is someone's hired a Black Widow assassin, and now it's serious. You've got her added to the story. You have an interaction with Kazi that I thought was a lot more diplomatic than just a fight scene. But again, they are setting these things up for something bigger. The one scene we have yet to get from in the show from the trailers is the shots of some kind of battle in the hockey rink. Now, I think that's Rockefeller Center. I think if they're going to showcase the city, that's a good spot for it, and that hockey rink would certainly make sense. But the most recent teaser we got shows that hockey rink, but it shows some lightning or something in the background. So that battle's going to be a lot bigger. Now, whether that's Yelena's doing or whether that's something else that we just haven't seen yet, I think all of our pieces are in place, and we could get some crossover help here. Yelena still has to have her redemption story, or at least her coming into the fold as a good guy, because Clint obviously thinks she's a bad guy, and Valentina seems to be using her. And then the same thing with Echo, with Maya's character. We have to have some kind of flip there that brings her into the fold for future stories. So whether that happens in episode 5 and then there's a big showdown in episode 6, or whether there's more setup in episode 5 and then some kind of reveal, maybe our Kingpin reveal, that leads into a bigger showdown in episode 6. I think these last 2 episodes are going to be absolutely massive. The conversation with Kate and Clint when they're having movie night, I thought was really moving. I thought Kate abandoning or leaving Eleanor and Jack, her supposed family, to go and hang out with Clint is just another example of where all these layers of Clint are starting to blend together in the character of Kate. She's stepping in as family. She's calling them partners, and she's kind of asserting herself into the relationship. And from her angle, if you're looking at just her, it seems very pushy, but she's looking for authentic connection, not just she's in love with her idol. And her mother even, and Jack even take note of that. You know, if he says, if I met Huey Lewis, I don't know what I would do. Probably an Easter egg there with some kind of Huey Lewis in the News song. So, but Kate leaves them for the evening to go and hang out with Clint. That's where she gets her revelation that he is Ronan, and he explains it to her. And I thought the analogy there of him saying, I've always been a weapon. I've always been pointed at something, pointed at the target, that he, as a metaphor, considers himself the arrow. If that's the case, and you're going to take the metaphor further, I wonder who he considers the bow, who was the support that was helping him point towards other things, who was the one pulling the trigger, so to speak. And definitely as Ronan, he was not just the one that was trained, and other people were pulling the trigger, you know, S.H.I.E.L.D. or the military or whoever, but as Ronan, he was the arrow, he was the bow, he was the one pulling the trigger, and he's trying to overcome that. It's the red in his ledger, so to speak. And so just those elements and that conversation were really deep and really connective for the two of them, and he is starting to open up, but what looks intrusive on Kate's part ends up becoming something that I think is really needed for Clint. I loved seeing his wife being his partner in that episode, being the one that is helping him, you know, here's where the watch is, here's where this is, I found some stuff out about this. But I think he's gonna figure out real quick, and it was the one thing that was off-putting for me, was as much as you and your wife should be partners, what he does is very, very dangerous, and her being involved in it in the way that she is paints a target on her. And so having someone that is skilled the way that Kate is, that can be that kind of partner the way that Natasha was, is even bigger. And then having Kate be the kind of person that might even take over the mantle for Clint so that he can go back and be with his family, that he can become more of what he should be, so that his wife doesn't have to become more of an Avengers type person, that he can become more of the homemaker person and come more her direction. I think is a really great storyline thread that's going to go throughout this. Clint, as they go after the watch, has this moment on the rooftop where Yelena and Maya are fighting, where he goes back to watching Natasha fall to her death as Kate falls off the roof, but she had that protection. And then she has this moment where she says, well, pull me up. Was a great moment. I think it had the ability to be a redemptive moment, but Clint pushes it away. He refuses to acknowledge that, and even pushes her further away, literally by saying, hey, go home, leave. Don't be a part of this. You shouldn't be a part of this. And so all of those things, it's going to be interesting to see what Kate does. Obviously, she's not going to leave it to herself, but I'm curious to see, does she shadow Hawkeye and come to his rescue, or does he live up to his promise that he gave to his wife, where he says, look, this girl's in trouble and I can't leave her till I know she's safe? Does he end up following her because she can't leave it alone and she's going after some things? Or do they fight on two different fronts that end up coming together in the end? I think before episode 6, they're going to have a way to come back together, whether that's at the end of the episode or somewhere in the middle. So stay tuned for those things. A lot of awesome stuff in this episode. Yelena being thrown into the mix is fantastic. If you look at her costume and do a Google search of Yelena widow costume or whatever, you'll see, and the pictures right here, that this was a kind of a comic accurate look with the night vision, the green goggles, although they didn't give her like 6 or 7 of them like they did in the comics. They just give her the 2. But really awesome interaction. And then the conversation that Clint has with Kate about who the shot was that he didn't take. The craziest shot he ever made was the one he didn't take. And then Kate being able to have that moment with Yelena as well, that she didn't take that shot. Now, whether it was she paused for a second because Yelena shook her head, or Kate has other motives there, remains to be seen. But I really thought that the connection between Kate and Yelena and Clint and Kate's stories there was a really cool origin moment, and something that's really going to pay off in the next 2 episodes. I'd like to hear from you in the comments who you think this watch belongs to. At first, I thought it was Tony Stark's watch from Captain America Civil War that he puts on, but he makes the comment that the watch is to preserve somebody's identity. Everybody knows that Black Widow is Natasha, and he's already told Kate that he's Ronin. So what this watch is for, who it belongs to, I'm not really convinced who it belongs to right now, and I'm kind of going through my list of particular Avengers that it could be, and maybe it's because it's early in the morning and I'm filming this episode right after the Hawkeye episode dropped, or maybe it's just because it's still a mystery, but I don't know yet. So if you know, drop that in the comments below. Stay tuned for our Easter egg video, which is going to drop in a couple hours, maybe another day here, but pretty soon as well. And check out some of our other videos here that we've got. As always, like and subscribe to our channel, and when the next one drops, we'll catch you right back here. See you guys.